West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Mark, we have all seen the Rachel Maddow clip. I've gotten hundreds of emails about it. For those who haven't yet seen what I'm talking about, here's a quick clip of that.
At Rolling Stone today, they profile 70 different election officials who have been put into position in the swing states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, who are election denialists, committed election denialists. Officials that have been put in place in all of those swing states to make sure that election results, no matter what they are, do not get certified in those states this year. Quote, at least 22 of these election officials have already refused or delayed certification processes in recent elections. According to Democratic election lawyer Mark Elias, quote, I think we are going to see mass refusals to certify the election in November. Quote, Republicans are counting on not just that they can disrupt the election in big counties, they're counting on the fact that if they don't certify in several small counties, you can't certify statewide results.
So, okay, there is a lot of concern right now, as we just saw, that Donald Trump won't even need votes because he's already got election officials in swing states who will simply refuse to certify the election results. So first off, so as not to bury the lead here, how realistic is this and what can be done about it?
So we have been talking about this as part of this series now for more than a year, and it is because this is very serious. This is something that everyone who cares about free and fair elections, cares about ensuring that we have the process in the post-election move smoothly and orderly, should be worried about. Like we saw this in 2020. The fact is that Donald Trump in 2020 tried to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power through litigation, ultimately through January 6th. But in between that, he tried to get, in the state of Michigan, the Wayne County board Republicans to refuse to certify the election results, and then tried to get the Republicans on the statewide board to refuse to certify the election results. So this is something we ought to be very, very worried about. We saw it again in 2022 in places, and I expect we will see it again in 2024. And as to what we can all do about it, look, my legal team is in court as we speak, trying to protect against this, but there is something for everyone to do. You know, you and I have been speaking out about it, and I wish more members of the media would be speaking out. Kudos to Rachel Maddow, but really kudos, frankly, to you, Brian, because you have been talking about this much longer. But we also need everyday Americans to be focused on this and to be paying attention and to be calling this out in their communities.
So because of their structure or who the officials in charge are, what specific states, for example, are especially worrisome for you? Like Michigan has a Democratic trifecta, so is it safe to assume that there's less risk than a place like Nevada, which now has a Republican governor?
I wish I could say that, that we don't have to worry about states like Michigan. But the fact is that the certification process, just to back up, starts at the municipal or county level, depending on the state. And these are oftentimes bipartisan boards, right? The idea historically has been that this is part of the celebration of democracy, part of the pageantry of democracy, as I've called it, where after the elections results after people have voted and the unofficial election results have been called in by the polling places, that on a bipartisan basis, Democrats and Republicans sit down and agree that the numbers add up to what they add up to. They are then put on a form, and both Democrats and Republicans sign off on those. Those are then sent to the counties to the state, ultimately the state to the governor. Governor signs a big certificate on a big calligraphy that goes to to Congress and the National Archives in the case of presidential elections. And it was those certificates on January 6th that were threatened by the insurrectionists, right? That's what they were trying to prevent. But before you get to the governor signing this, you have a whole bunch of these sort of celebrations of democracy at the local and statewide level. And those are oftentimes bipartisan, as I mentioned, bipartisan boards. So in Arizona, we saw Cochise County, Arizona refusing to certify to try to prevent the state of Arizona certifying the election results in 2022. So it's a lot of states. It's Michigan, it's Wisconsin, it's Arizona, it's Georgia. In Georgia, the Republicans are actually trying to pass a rule to make it more discretion for election deniers to not certify elections. So it's in every one of our communities we need to pay attention to this.
Well, are there any legal ramifications for people who corruptly refuse to certify or who refuse to actually do their jobs by virtue of not certifying when their job is to certify?
Absolutely. So in Arizona, I mentioned in Cochise County after 2022, when that county's Republicans were refusing to certify, my law firm, we brought a lawsuit, we sued, we won, and then after that, there were actually indictments of the Cochise County officials by the state of Arizona because they are, as you point out, in violation of the state law. You know, they are in violation of their obligation, and the ultimate. You know, we throw around terms like election denialism or election subversion, election interference. What is more subversive than refusing to allow the election results to be certified? What is more denial than that? And what is more interfering with the outcome of elections than trying to block the peaceful transfer of power or the peaceful election certification process? So these are very, very serious. They are crimes in many places, and they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Well, you just mentioned that your firm is doing exactly that, so I know a lot of us out here are wondering what can be done. Mark and his team are on the front lines doing it right now, so for those who want to support him and his team and the invaluable work that they do, a tiny step that we can all take is just to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet he founded to focus on everything voting in elections. That is his way to get good, accurate information out to the rest of us. It's also a tiny step. It's free, and it's a great way to support him for all the work that he and his firm are doing in this incredibly important arena. So I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. If you're not yet signed up, please do a favor and sign up. Mark, to what extent can the refusal to certify one small county, for example, prevent the state certification from actually moving forward?
Yeah, of course, that's the big worry, right? So in 2020, Donald Trump and Ronna McDaniel found themselves on the phone with the Wayne County Republican Canvass Board members. I mean, just think about how breathtaking that is, that you are like on this local board. Now, Wayne County is a big county, right? It's Detroit. But you are on this board, and the President of the United States is calling you, along with the chair of the RNC, telling you, oh, don't worry, don't do it, we'll get you lawyers. Remember that piece of it, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
But in 2022, we saw them sort of move to an even more extreme position in that you had these rural red counties like Cochise County, Arizona. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I'm very fond of Cochise County. I think good people live there. It's a great place to live, but it's not Maricopa, right? It's not a large county, but you started to see these smaller counties think that they could hold up the entire state by refusing to certify. So I worry a lot that it is not just the large counties, but it will be these small counties. And if you're a Secretary of State, if you're the Secretary of State of Michigan or of Wisconsin or Nevada or Pennsylvania or Georgia, what do you do if you don't have all the results? Like you can say, well, it didn't really affect the outcome, but that's not right? Like in the end, you need all of the counties in your state to participate, and it is just an absolute crime. I mean that literally and figuratively, that Republicans are spreading this hate and these lies in ways that undermine what is ultimately the thing that makes this country great, which is free and fair elections and the coming together after the elections behind the winners.
So I just want to drill into this for a moment, because I really want to understand what we should expect to be done. Is it just that, first of all, in different states there's different rules, so we're going to see scattershot decisions regardless, and that ultimately all of these are going to be left up to basically litigation in each state's respective courts, or the way that each state has to litigate these issues as it relates to the Supreme Court and certification with the governor and all that? Is this just scattershot rulings depending on the jurisdiction?
So we hope that going into elections, that election officials will realize that their paramount obligation is to the people of their state, to the law, and to the Constitution. But we can't be sure that that's going to be the case. And increasingly, Donald Trump is making clear he doesn't want that to be the case. I mean, think about what Donald Trump has said about get out the vote. He has said, don't worry about getting out the vote, just worry about election denial. He has said we're not going to have to worry about elections at all in 4 years. So we have to be clear-eyed that despite the best hope we have that people will do the right thing, that people won't do the right thing. And then, yes, Brian, it is left to the court system in a somewhat scattershot fashion. Maybe there is a way to consolidate across counties in a particular state, but it is going to have to be fought county by county, state by state, to force accurate certification of elections. And that is a tragedy for our democracy, that it may come to that again in 2024. It came to that in 2022, and we all need to be ready.
Mark, for posterity here, is certifying elections in any way optional? And what is your message to these county election officials, who do refuse to certify election results?
If you are a Republican county official, do your job. If you're not prepared to do your job, to administer fair elections, to certify accurate results, now is the time to resign. Get out of office. Don't be sitting in the chair you're sitting in. You're not cut out for the job that you have been given. If you cannot celebrate democracy and the outcome of free and fair elections, regardless of whether the candidate you support won or lost, you're in the wrong business. Leave the election business and go do something else. But if you stay in this job, if you choose to be in a position to administer elections and to certify the election results, and you don't do your job, you're going to get sued and you're going to lose. And you are going to go down in history as one of the villains in American history. And that is true for the county election officials. It is true for the state election officials. And by the way, it is true for those Republican members of Congress listening. If you can't accept the outcome of free and fair elections, shame on you. Go find another line of work.
It is Friday, the 2nd of August of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, but as you know, she's sleeping in, so we will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, no matter what time of day. Alrighty. Okay, daily update on Little Precious. Gave her the first series of the actual pain medication on top of her, or along with her, prednisone. And once again, the treatment, the weekly IV drip treatment, she seemed pretty good from that. And the pain medication, I don't know, I'm not a dog, but it seems like it's helping quite a bit. She, on her own last night, had enough balance and strength and spring to go and get up on the sofa and sleep on the sofa. From about midnight on, she was still a little after midnight when I went out to make sure the lights were off and the security screen doors are locked, because we leave the doors open, but the security doors locked. Screens, I mean, so that we can let the air in. Anyway, just to, batten down the hatches, and she was sleeping in the hallway outside my room. And when I got up this morning, she had found herself a comfortable spot in between some pillows on the sofa. So, oh yeah, I got to tell you, we never called that piece of furniture in your living room a couch. And I'm glad that we always called it a sofa, because I think if I was a kid now, I'd be damaged knowing that we have a couch in our house. Especially around here where people get, I gotta tell you, they get the MAGA line all the time, and anything else is indoctrination. Okay? Can't have that. Yeah. All right. Nothing says indoctrination like fuck Biden that the kids have to look at on the way to school. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So how are you folks out there? Isn't it a grand, I don't know, America is great. I know that we have more hostages being held by rogue states, mobbed up rogue states like Russia. We can't get them all. But this is an historic transfer of hostages. And let's be clear, out and out crooks that should have never been able to see the light of day. I just am, I'm pleased, okay? I want the journalists back. People forget that, the Radio Free Europe lady. No, we reported that here. And she's a journalist. And Kamerza. I mean, that's Browder's guy. So we've been following this for quite some time. So to get the Washington Post journalist back, Gerskovich. Anyway, I'm with David. How do you pronounce his name again? And Paul Whelan. I mean, we took the wind out of Trump's sails. Who is he again? If he had any sails to begin with, it was all hot air. He's got a lot of hot air, but, it doesn't really fill the sails to move him along. Well, I take that back. It does move him along along a certain route. Yep. He's got a lot of hot air that activates people, apparently, and I don't like it. So, unfortunately, I get to see how the base reacts to all of this, and maybe fortunately, maybe it is fortunate that I'm seeing it. And what I'm seeing is abject silence, at least for now. I haven't brought it up. I haven't, poked any, rattlesnakes or scorpion nests or whatever. I am accused of spamming politics on the local Facebook board, but what they consider spamming is any response counter to really, their indoctrination, because that's clearly what they are doing. And if you bring it up, well, you're shunned. Maybe in another day they would have sent a group of guys to come and haul me out and put me in stocks in the city center and then tar and feather me. Could be. I mean, it starts somewhere, and the next thing you know, you're ending up defending democracy from an armed mob who says, we don't like that there's a black guy running our country. We can't stand that. Now you're going to shove a black woman down our throat? Now, but they're confused now. Is she black or is she Indian? See, this is the way their mind works. It's either or. It can't be both. All right? As if we haven't had biracial kids for I don't know how long. Well, we all said that Trump was a racist, and some of the proof was when he got fined, the largest fine in HUD history for racial housing discrimination. It wasn't lost on anybody back in the day. If people picked up even the LA Times, I read about it in the Orange County Register. Trump company fined largest HUD fine in history. I mean, it was right there. We read it. And in my family, Woody Guthrie hated old man Trump. My dad used to sing that song in the house. We called our dad a barstool tenor. He was good. He could actually entertain, a dive bar sitting on a bar stool turned around. He never sat at the end of the bar, by the way. My dad wasn't that kind of a guy. But he knew all sorts. Well, I was going to say every. He might have known every cowboy song that there was. Because he could fill the night and never repeat a song. I'm just saying. He'd never go on stage. He wasn't that kind of guy. But he was a barstool tenor. And he sang that Woody Guthrie song about old man Trump. Being a crook. Bad landlord. So I don't know. Maybe I had a predisposition of hating Trump from an early age because they're a bunch of mobs up, racist, Klan-hooded bigots. Bigot landlords. Slumlords. Oh, God. So here we are. Finally, the Washington Post reports on a $10 million bribe from Egypt. Didn't we read about that with Marcy Wheeler quite some time ago? Well, I think what happened there is that Marcy Wheeler poked a scorpion's nest, and Lenig and crew have to corroborate it. And once they do, then it's going to be... Look, Marcy Wheeler, empty wheel, said she's not upset. The story's out there. That's the whole point. And then she's got some pointers for maybe Carolyn Lenig and her crew to follow. Like, hey, ask about this Alpha Bank connection that they shut down. See, that's what's funny, is that some on the right point to the Alpha Bank pinging, the Alpha Bank whatever modem. It was like pinging all of a sudden. And why was that happening? Because there was a money transfer coming through. And the two investigators tasked with investigating that got barred. Bill Barr set in motion his desire to shut down that investigation, and it was shut down for lack of evidence. Why? Because they didn't investigate why that Alpha Bank modem was pinging while a $10 million transfer was probably coming through. I'm just saying. Or it could have been something else. I don't know. They should have investigated. No Russian collusion either. Yeah, well, we know about that. Mm-hmm. So, got our hostages back, some of them, because there's still more. We'll get more. And, of course, Joe may or may not get his due. Probably won't, because there's lots of other things that he's done. And like he warned the press, I'm here for 90 more days. You're not getting rid of me. And wait for the next thing he's going to do. I can't wait. Because Joe says, hey, if I'm going out, I'm a team guy. Watch me. Okay. Who else is he going to, shall we say, puncture and deflate on the way out? Dark Brandon rises. Alrighty. So the Olympics. Oh my God. They can't even root for America. Why don't they just shut up, root for America, and watch some sports? Why do they have to be so weird? We were taught in our family not to really comment on the masculine or feminine looks of people because that was superficial. And I think really what it was is that our parents didn't want us to get into this idea like, well, that girl looks like a guy or that guy looks like a girl. They look how they look. Leave them alone. So now, since they couldn't find the turfs couldn't find a trans person anywhere in the Olympics, they had to invent one. And so they invented one from this poor lady from Algeria who's been boxing since before Tokyo, where she lost. God. She's like middle of the pack, and they're acting like she's some sort of world champion beating all the crap out of women all over the world because she's a guy. Look at her. How bigoted and how sick. We all said this was going to happen. All right? They say, oh, trans people are like, we got carte blanche to be able to just kick the shit out of trans people. Look at them. They're trying to indoctrinate our kids into drag queen story hour. Uh-huh. And all the while, what have they been doing? They're weird. Youth ministers at little churches, I got to tell you, just the idea of youth minister. And it's not a youth, it's a guy like, in his 20s to 80s. Ministering the youth. I am sorry, that is weird. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. And I'm not tithing it either at 10. Tithing is 10. I make weird associations when I'm only on a cup and a half of coffee. And it's a big cup, too. So, yeah. Simone Biles does her thing and is like the consummate champion, and then makes the offhand remark of like, well, this is my black job. And now she's being called a racist for repeating Donald Trump's charge that there's black jobs. They're coming to take your black job. And they're calling Simone Biles the racist. I think that's called Darvo, isn't it? Isn't it? Deflect. Yeah, starts off with a deflect. Next thing you know, you're in their clutches and they got you. We don't want that anymore. So it is Friday, and why don't we give you the rundown on what we will try to cram in? Oh my God, I just go off now on the beginning of the show, where it not only is the beginning, but is the middle and about almost towards the end. Then I got to cram in the news that we wanted to impart and share. Well, what is that news that we have? Well, we already heard there at the top with Elias giving a fair warning to election officials. You F up, we're coming after you. And by F up, meaning you try to stop a fair and free election, that is against the law. And Mark's coming after you. I expect the Supreme Court to rule that law firms like Mark Elias won't have standing because they're just private citizens. They want everything private except when, we need oversight on them. That's probably what they fear. They're next. No, you're not next. You're now. Okay. Sorry about that tangent. What do we have on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe? The University of California set a new record with the largest, most diverse class of California students for this fall 2024 semester. Well, good for them. It's going to make MAGA mad. They're going to call it DEI. Yeah, okay. Well, too bad. The Justice Department will offer cash rewards for whistleblower tips on criminal financial misconduct, and you expect MAGA to be against that too. If they're not about criminal financial misconduct, they're not about anything. They love that. And a federal appeals court made it harder for Black and Hispanic voters to elect candidates they prefer in 3 southern states, overhauling long-standing precedents. And I got to say, if the MAGA courts aren't about overturning or overruling long-standing precedents, they're not about anything. That's why they're there. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where 2 Belarusian journalists working for news outlets that the government of authoritarian President Lukashenko, well, he declared them extremists. Okay, and they've been sentenced to prison in a closed-door trial. Autocrats like that. And saying it is a key partner, India offered a $300 million loan to build up Vietnam's maritime security. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Once again, we're going to tuck into this first offering right away here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it is out of the Los Angeles Times by Teresa Watanabe. The University of California admitted the largest and most diverse class of undergraduates for fall 2024, opening the doors of the vaunted public research institution to more California low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students of color, according to preliminary data that was released late Wednesday. In the striking data, UC shared for the first time the gender identity of admitted students as part of its annual data release. System-wide, women are the dominant gender among first-year students, reaching 55%. At 6 campuses, Berkeley, Davis, Irvine, UCLA, San Diego, and Santa Barbara, the gender gap is greater, with men representing about 37% of students. UC Merced was the most evenly balanced, with 49% women and 46% men. The genders were at greater parity among transfer admits. About 5% of admitted students identified differently as non-binary or transgender, for instance, or did not disclose their gender identity. Overall, UC admitted 93,920 first-year California students, up 4.3% from last year, an all-time high amid widespread public demands to give more seats to state students after campuses began admitting a larger share of international and out-of-state applicants several years ago to raise revenue amid major state funding cuts. Because out-of-state and international students pay through the nose for admission, tuition, books, and housing. Trust me, it is a moneymaker. All right. The system-wide admission rate for California first-year students climbed to 70%, up from 68% last year, but at UCLA, the nation's most applied-to university, the admit rate remained in single digits at 9.5%. In total, UC had offered admission to 166,706 first-year and transfer students from California and other states and countries. So, about 167,000. For the fifth consecutive year, Latinos were the largest group of admitted first-year California students, primarily because of their dominant numbers accepted by UC Merced. At all of the other 8 undergraduate campuses, Asian Americans were the leading group admitted. Overall, Latinos made up 39% of first-year Californians admitted, followed by Asian Americans at 33%, whites at 18%, black students at 6%, American Indians at 1%, and Pacific Islanders at less than 1%. UC also increased access to low-income students, who made up nearly 41% of the admitted first-year California class. The share of those who will be first in their families grew to 43%. David Nakamura at the Washington Post brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Justice Department yesterday, Thursday, unveiled a corporate whistleblower pilot program targeting foreign corruption and financial fraud that authorities said could yield billions of dollars in forfeitures each year. Trump will just call it election interference when they come tapping his illegal gains, won't he? Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco said the initiative aims to replicate the success of other federal agencies whose whistleblower rewards programs have generated thousands of tips about misconducts and leads on lucrative criminal cases. Under the Justice Department's initiative, tipsters who are first to provide information of corporate wrongdoing that leads to a successful prosecution or settlement could be eligible for up to 30% of the first $100 million in company forfeitures and 5% on additional proceeds up to $500 million. Whistleblowers must provide information that leads to forfeitures of at least $1 million to be eligible for a payout and must not have participated in the misconduct. Oh, darn, MAGA says, darn. Monaco said the program aims to build on the department's focus on curbing white-collar crime and bolstering incentives for corporate leaders to voluntarily self-report misconduct or face stiffer legal penalties if they fail to do so. We'll see which behavior they hew to. Companies that disclose wrongdoing to the Justice Department within 120 days of discovering misconduct and cooperate with federal investigators will be granted more leniency. Well, what's different about that? That's how it's always been. The department is modeling the program on similar ones in other federal agencies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, officials said. What is it about white-collar criminals? You have to offer them, something, and then they have to agree or disagree. Arrest their ass and fine them. Well, the SEC received 18,000 tips in fiscal 2023, up nearly 50% from a year earlier, and paid a record $600 million to 68 whistleblowers. The CFTC received over 1,500 tips and paid 7 whistleblowers, a total of $16 million last year. Now, although the Justice Department has for many years paid whistleblowers under the False Claims Act, that law is limited to civil cases involving abuse of the government's vast federal contracting system. The department's initiative will target enforcement areas that are not covered by other whistleblower programs. Among them are companies outside the SEC's jurisdiction, as well as fraud involving private health insurance and bribery of public officials. Vasquez, also at the Washington Post, brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A federal appeals court yesterday, Thursday, made it harder for Black and Hispanic voters to form coalitions to elect the candidates they prefer in 3 southern states, overruling long-standing precedents. For decades, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit held that the Voting Rights Act allows voting districts that give Black and Hispanic voters the ability to elect candidates of their choice when they have common interests and can form coalitions. Voting rights advocates have praised such rulings because they allow Black and Hispanic voters to get their voices heard, even when each group does not constitute a majority on its own. After the 2020 census, commissioners in Texas's Galveston County drew new lines that dissolved the only coalition district in the county. The Justice Department and voters sued, and a district court judge ruled in their favor, citing the appeals court's precedents. A panel of 3 appeals court judges upheld that ruling, but also called for the full appeals court to take up the issue to reverse its prior rulings. Yesterday, Thursday, the full appeals court did just that. In a 12-6 decision, it ruled the language in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and decisions from the Supreme Court do not require coalition districts. Nowhere does Section 2 indicate that 2 minority groups may combine forces to pursue a vote dilution claim, the court wrote in the majority opinion. The dissenters issued 2 opinions, including one that called the majority decision atextual and ahistorical. Today, the majority finally dismantled the effectiveness of the Voting Rights Act in this circuit, leaving 4 decades of en banc precedent flattened in its wake, they wrote. Now, the case centered on the makeup of the Galveston Commissioners Court, which consists of 4 county commissioners elected from districts and a county executive called a judge, elected by the entire county. Until the new lines were drawn, Black and Hispanic residents made up a majority in one of the 4 commissioner districts for 3 decades. Well, that's too long for them. In Galveston County, 58% of the voting age population is white. 22.5% is Hispanic and 12.5% is Black, according to the decision. Hispanic voters are spread across the county, while Black voters are concentrated in the heart of the county. The ruling is binding on the 3 states in the New Orleans-based appeals court's jurisdiction. One of the most virulently right-wing in the country, I might add. Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. All right, with that terrible news, let us now go to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Swept Away. The makers of Movie Magic are about as attracted to big violent storms as cable TV is to sharks. The standalone sort of sequel to 1996's Twisters just slammed into theaters, complete with in-theater wind and raindrops if you catch it in 4D. At the helm is Lee Isaac Chung, known for the quiet and powerful Minari and notably not a certified action director, which might explain the more human touch here. Our protagonist is Kate Carter, Daisy Edgar Jones, a Ph.D. meteorologist living in New York, who years earlier had a bad experience while storm chasing in hopes of being able to place a load of sodium polyacrylate into a tornado vortex in hopes of dissipating it, which is an actual but unproven theory. Anyway, her former partner Ravi talks her into coming back to Oklahoma to chase for a week during an outbreak, and where she might have the chance to try again with the chemical. While doing this, she meets YouTube tornado wrangler Tyler, heartthrob Glenn Powell, and yeah, Ravi and Tyler both kind of have the hots for her, but that doesn't become a distraction. Issues around storm chasing and the motivations behind the individuals and entities doing it are examined with surprising sophistication. Do these chasers find way too many storms? Sure. Is the scientific jargon always accurate? Well, it's better than most movies like this, but consultants or no, it does go a bit astray. And of course, the dramatic element that must be there is that sixth sense possessed by some characters that trump the data to heroic effect. As tornadoes are a mid-America phenomenon, so is Twisters, with its country music, rodeos, and wide-open spaces. See it for amazing effects and the Americana. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In May, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld a racially gerrymandered South Carolina congressional district and made future racial gerrymandering cases more difficult. July 29th, pro-voter groups filed a state suit, claiming the gerrymander violated the state constitutional provision to an equal right to elect officers. In 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that partisan gerrymandering was a matter for the states to decide, but racial gerrymandering could still be challenged under the Voting Rights Act. The South Carolina NAACP sued when 30,000 black voters were moved to a more white district, diluting their voting power and creating a white Republican majority district. The South Carolina legislature claimed it did so for partisan, not racial reasons. The U.S. Supreme Court not only allowed the racially gerrymandered district, but raised the bar for proving future racial gerrymandering cases. The NAACP withdrew further challenges on July 26th. July 29th, the ACLU and the League of Women Voters asked the South Carolina Supreme Court to rule on the state constitutionality of the same congressional district, citing Article 1, Section 5. Lynn Teague of the South Carolina League of Women Voters said in a statement, "South Carolina's Constitution protects its citizens' right to exercise equal influence over our elections." We have a link to the case at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day striking Teamsters in Minneapolis defied martial law. They stopped scab trucks, forcing the release of their strike leaders. Armed with bayonets and machine guns, the National Guard had patrolled the streets for nearly a week. They seized scores of strikers and union leaders and threw them into military stockades. Drivers were outraged. They defied Governor Olson and Major General Walsh, who, on behalf of the Citizens Alliance and trucking bosses, were determined to break the strike. Soon after strikers were imprisoned, drivers began chasing scab trucks across the city. Multiple reports poured in of picketers forcing trucks to stop. Some unloaded their cargo onto bridges. Others chased, captured, and damaged the scab trucks. Strikers ripped ignition wires out, forced scabs from the wheel, and then disappeared before police and the National Guard could arrive to retaliate. In just 3 hours, strikers had overturned nearly 70 trucks. Unable to stop the superior force of striking drivers, Bill Brown, Vincent, and Miles Dunn were ordered unconditionally released from the military stockades. Now, employers, the governor, and other strike-breaking agencies were eager to propose peace to federal mediators. But they proposed to scrap the terms of their earlier May agreement. In response, the leaders of Local 574 issued a general strike call. In it, they asked, quote, "Is there one man so blind as not to see that if 574 is allowed to go down to defeat under the brutal hammering of military despotism, the whole labor movement of the city will have been dealt a mortal blow? Union men, brothers, sisters, fellow workers, what are you going to do about it? We appeal to you for solidarity."
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be cooler than yesterday, only 100. Only. Will be sunny to partly cloudy throughout the day, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and partly cloudy early this evening, followed by cloudy skies overnight, lows in the mid to upper 60s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then cloudy tomorrow with a precipitous drop in temperature. Looks like we're only going to reach around 90 to 95 only. Winds light and variable. And looks like we're going to hold those temps over the weekend, and then we'll see what we're going to get next week. Grass pollen is rated as moderate here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the moderate range at 60 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at level 8. Take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.12 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 71%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. It is. London is registering 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 83 and partly cloudy, a respite from the heat wave they have there for the Olympics. Rome is 96 and sunny, and they've taken their heat advisory off. Kabul is 79 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 87 and fair. Tokyo is 82 and partly cloudy. Auckland, New Zealand is 51 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 56 and mostly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 75 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 91 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, with an active heat advisory. So do take care. Stay hydrated. Throw cold water on your face. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. 2 Belarusian journalists working for news outlets that the government of Lukashenko has declared extremist have been sentenced to prison, the country's leading human rights group reported. The convictions in a closed-door trial are the latest in a persistent crackdown on dissent and independent journalism. The severe repression began when huge protests arose after the disputed 2020 presidential election that gave Lukashenko a 6th term in office. More than 35,000 people have been arrested in the crackdown. Many prominent opposition figures have fled the country, and others have been sentenced to long prison terms. The rights group Vyazna says there are nearly 1,400 political prisoners currently in Belarus. Reporter Ales Sabaluski was sentenced on Wednesday to 4 years, and cameraman Yahun Yalashku to 3 by the court in Vyazna, by the court in the city of Mogilev, Vyazna said. They were convicted of participating in foreign military actions, but further details were not available. The two worked with 2 Belarusian media operations that have been banned as extremist, but that continue to work from abroad. Ashok Sharma at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. India, yesterday, Thursday, offered a $300 million loan to build up Vietnam's maritime security, as the two sides said they want to double their trade and investment within 5 years. Prime Minister Modi told visiting Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh that India considers Vietnam a key pillar of its policy toward Southeast Asian nations and an important partner in the Indo-Pacific vision. After their talks, Chin told reporters the world faces fierce security challenges, but there are opportunities for cooperation. The Asia-Indo-Pacific region is a locomotive for growth, but it is also where major politics is taking place fiercely, he said. We need an approach and methodology that is global and upholding multilateralism. The Prime Minister said both sides wanted to further their cooperation in defense and other areas such as semiconductor and green technology, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and climate action. Modi and Chin virtually inaugurated the Army Software Park in Vietnam, an educational facility set up with India's help to train Vietnamese soldiers in digital skills. Oh, really? Tell us more. Well, bilateral trade between the two countries in 2022 grew 27% and reached $14.14 billion. India exports to Vietnam touched about $6.5 billion, while Indian imports from Vietnam amounted to almost $7.5 billion in the same period. India exports to Vietnam include iron and steel, cotton, cereals, meat and fishery products, electrical machinery and equipment, automobile parts, cement, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. Well. That does bring us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know that Roots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to that Roots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy. Appétit.
Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. T'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.